I've done it before. I introduced Python in several courses that that I taught. And I assume you see my screen now, right? Yep. Okay, cool. But I updated them a little bit, and I'd like to start with motivation. So first of all, why Python? Of course, well, when people do computational research, it's not necessarily that they use Python. However, well, there are many reasons for using Python to do that. Well, especially if you're a chemical engineer or any engineer, you're not a computer science major. There are many, many reasons. So I assume all of you took the introductory C++ course, right? So in C++, you can do everything. You can do absolutely everything. Many codes, many scientific codes, many things are written in C++. However, many things are written in Python, and when things are written in Python, they are much more simple. So that's an example I took from a book. By the way, I'm not, by no means, I don't want you to spend money and buy books. We don't need books, but there are many books on Python, and there are in particular many books on Python for engineers, scientists, researchers, not for computer science major. So I took this example from these book, and I might take more example from it in the future. So if we need to write a simple code in Python to display, well, the names Isaac Newton, Marie Curie, and Albert Einstein, that's what our code would look like. If we need to do it in C++, right, and hopefully you're comfortable with that, so you need to include a bunch of modules, you need to introduce some constants, you need your main function, you need to introduce the type of variable, another type of variable, and so on and so forth. So this 3-line code in Python turns into, well, an entire slide when you do it in C. Okay, so, well, if you do something more, something else, that's often the case. So, all right. So that's not the first reason, but the first reason is that Python, unlike many other resources, it's open source and free. You don't need to pay a penny when you're using Python. That, of course, compares it with MATLAB. And I won't be tired of telling the same story again and again. At some point, I worked at Princeton University as a postdoctoral researcher, and I had a colleague who was Swiss. And my Swiss colleague, so he was laughing at me because he was using MATLAB and I was using Python. And he said, why do you need Python? Look, MATLAB is much better documented. There are so many online examples in MATLAB and not so many on Python, and so on and so forth. And I told him, you know what, I use it because it's free. And then he concluded his appointment at Princeton and went back to Switzerland, and he got a job in industry in a small company. And I don't know what do you know about Switzerland. When I think of Switzerland, one of the first thing I think about is it's a very rich country. Nevertheless, the small company he worked for did not have money to purchase a MATLAB license. And a few weeks after this guy left, I received an email from him saying, "Hey, Gennady, where can I learn about this Python thing? Because my company wants me to use Python instead of MATLAB." So, long story short, once you graduate and go work in a company, it won't necessarily have a MATLAB license. But if you would need to do some computation, you for sure will be able to use Python. All right, it's easy to learn and simple to use, and it's very readable, and that's the example I gave above. It's very versatile, in fact, you can do pretty much anything you want in Python, and it could be web development, it could be scientific applications, and so on. I'm not going to teach you any web development things, of course, but if you're, if you know the basics, you can learn yourself after that, but that's probably not what you want to do. All right. It's becoming widely spread, in particular in science and engineering community, because people like free stuff, and people like who are not computer science people, they like stuff which is easy. All right. It's interpreted, and it does not need to be compiled, unlike Fortran and C++. And here, I hate giving these long monologues, so I'll ask you a question. Do you guys know what the difference between interpreted languages and compiled languages? Well, I'm asking everyone except Ellie, assuming Ellie knows.
So
Say it again. I didn't hear you.
I said no.
Okay, that's a good answer, but is there any other answer? Does anyone know this difference? Guys, no? Okay, could you raise your hands who took the C++ course? You had the introduction to C++, and that's a required computer science course. Did you take it? So all of you took it, and they didn't tell you what's the difference. So, in fact, when you write a code, and I'll go back to my previous slides, all right? When you write these code in Python, all you need to do after that, you need to click run or execute, and it's going to run. When you write these things in C or C++, before you run something, this is just a text file. It's not going to run. You need to compile it. You need to do something with it. You need to turn it into a binary file, or if you're using Windows, it's going to be executable file, .exe. And then these processes called compilation. Python doesn't need that. It's not unique. In this sense, MATLAB is very similar. You don't need to compile your MATLAB script. Oh, by the way, guys, remind me, whom of you, some of you are familiar with MATLAB, right? Okay. All right. So that makes Python more convenient. That makes, well, it's similar to MATLAB, but different from C++ or Fortran. And however, these exact circumstance makes it slow comparing to Fortran or C++. So it's slower when you need to do very advanced calculations, which my students, in fact, both graduate and some undergraduate students, they have to calculate things, well, many times, and perform many mathematical operations. You don't do it in Python. You typically do it in C++ still, because if you some code can run a week in Python and just a few hours in C++. So, all right, Python has an interface with the precompiled C++ and Fortran modules, which make it much faster. So in some cases, you can, in fact, do the math still in Python and don't learn any advanced languages. And I can honestly tell you, if you are, even if you're going to be doing research with me more actively and decide to develop your own stuff, and it's very likely that you won't need anything except Python. All right. It has the capability of MATLAB through the numerical and scientific modules, NumPy and SciPy. We're not going to talk about them today, but we're going to talk about them soon. Okay, so we'll start with Python. You already installed Anaconda. When you open your Anaconda window, could you do it right now for me? And in Anaconda, there should be Spider. And I can, and once you run Spider, once you execute it, you just type in the chat that yes, it's running. And by the way, if you're in the future, don't hesitate to use chat during these meetings. I mean, I'm okay with both chat and oral questions. It's harder in class, but here when we have only 4 people, it's very easy. Let me check if my Anaconda is running. I can stop sharing the screen for now and share it later again. Okay, okay, guys, once your Anaconda is running, run Spider. Okay, I can share the screen again and show that. Okay, because I will be sharing the screen. All right, do you see my screen now, right? Okay, so I'm launching Spider. On these computers, it takes a little while, but hopefully not too long. So Anaconda is not just Spider. It's, well, first of all, it's an environment to use different tools to develop and run your Python scripts. By the way, I will use the word script and code interchangeably, although technically.
Professor, we have a fire drill.
Okay, then you guys have to leave. Guys, I'm so Joseph and Jeff. So I'm recording the session. So in case you, that's all right. I can't do anything with your fire drill. If you burn alive, I will feel guilty. All right. See you. Please reconnect when you get a chance. All right. So Kimberly and Nana, let's continue. So guys, were you able to run Spider? Is it running? Okay. Well, as I said, on my computer, it's just taking forever, but that's all right. We can afford this pause. I don't know. This is embarrassing. But it worked. It's just loading for a few minutes. So as I said, I'm using the words script and code interchangeably for interpreted languages, since all we need is a text file with commands, and therefore this script is what our code is. This is what is running for the languages where we need compilation. You have a code, but then you compile it into something else. So and you don't call the code as script because it's not executing. Okay, all right, my Spider is finally here, although my computer is still thinking about something. So in your Spider, you have 3 different windows. I rearranged them a little bit, so if you run it, the default view would be a little bit different. So you have this window with your files, like temporary file probably. If you have not used it before, you have these thing here with like variable explorer and other stuff, and you have the IPython console here. So you see it at the bottom, right? You see this window with IPython console, right? So this is the window which you're gonna need, and I'm gonna show you what's one second. Just give me a second. I'll get my slides, and so that's okay. All right, you still see my screen, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So if you see on your screen, do you see the same in one in your console window. All right. So this is IPython. This is an visual interface which is quite interactive. You can just type commands there, and Python will do something and will print you some output. We'll begin today from using just this in learning some simple commands, and then of course after that, presumably next week, we'll get to the point where we will be writing our scripts. We will be writing the entire sets of commands for Python. So the first thing, the first thing what you can think of Python, and oh, let me do one more thing. Let me make my font a little bit larger. I think. All right, you survived. All right. Hopefully it was just
Fire drill.
just a drill, right? Okay, let me move it here. This here. Okay. So once Joe is back, I'll tell you guys what to do. You didn't miss much. So and especially Jeff, if you already started your exploration of Python, you should probably easy catch up. So you run Spider, you open these among the 3 windows on Spider, you choose the window which says IPython console, and in this console you can start typing. And I will ask you guys to do a very simple thing today. You don't have to take notes. This video will be available for you. Plus, I will make the slides with a summary of what I'm saying today available. So just repeat, and if you need time to catch up, you just tell me, hey, professor, slow down. I'm not getting what you're doing and what's going on there. And just, by the way, in general, just interrupt me when you feel you need to interrupt me.
Professor. Can I use another text editor? Can I use PyCharm instead of Spider?
Yes, certainly you can. However, for today, I would appreciate if you just follow what I do. If you can use IPython console everywhere. If you can use if, for example, if somebody's more comfortable with the command line, you can run IPython in the command line and do the same things in the command line. I don't care. However, if you run into something with your, with your other environment, I can't help you because I'm currently will be using this. So, and well, to be honest, I think if you already spend a few weeks running using Python, you should be comfortable. And I'll start from basic things, so you probably know them all. All right, let's type something. Let's type a number here and press enter. If you type a number, it spits you out the same number. All right. You can actually use it as a calculator, right? You can add 2 plus 2, and it will give you, magically, it will give you 4, all right? You can use multiplication. You can add several different numbers. And indeed, this is, in fact, when I solve problems for your homeworks or exams on thermo class, I typically use Python. I just use it as a calculator. I use it as I write scripts which output the plots and so on. You don't have to do it, but anyway, the calculator is a very simple thing which Python provides you. And for me, the good thing, you can press the up button, on your keyboard, and it will repeat the expression you just entered. So, for example, if you need to do another calculation, but just say this thing will be squared, right? That's very easy. You don't need to copy the entire thing, right? And this multiplication sign, when it's written twice, it's the power. All right, there are other mathematical operations. For example, the modulo operation, right? So this is it gives you the remainder of the integer division. So you divide 5 by 2, you get 2, and you have a remainder of 1, right? This is quite frequently an operation you need. Oh, by the way, I already, and you divided by 3, you get the remainder of 2. Quite frequently you'll need it when dealing with simple scripts. By the way, you can already notice sometimes I use the spaces between the operations. Sometimes I don't, because Python doesn't care. And many other programming languages also don't care. So it doesn't matter whether you have or you don't have these spaces there. All right, it's fun to do arithmetics, but well, when you use a programming language, you typically introduce variables. All right, let me introduce a variable and introduce a new variable b, which will be a times 2. All right, and now it doesn't print me anything, but if I print a, it will tell me what my a equals to. If I print b, if I just enter b, it will tell me what my b is equal to. So far, is my pace tolerable? Am I not going too fast? Okay, terrific, terrific. Just don't hesitate to tell me, hey, professor, slow down, because, well, and also same thing in thermo. So whom of you are taking my thermo? Okay, Jeff, you're taking, and Kimberly, cool. So Joseph, you're not in thermo 2 yet? I didn't hear you, but I guess it was a no. Okay. All right. And I know Nana has already taken thermo with Dr. Dobrzhansky. By the way, how does he introduce himself? As a Dr. Dobrzhansky, and people can pronounce that?
No, he doesn't usually put the doctor there. He just goes
By Chris?
like Chris, yeah, Christopher.
Okay, good. All right. So this is, well, as I said, these are variables, and if you took C++ course, presumably you know when you introduce a variable, you need to define what? When you introduce in a variable, what do you need to define? That's fine. It's not embarrassing to say something wrong, but say something, guys.
I know it's like a string.
You said a string?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's put it that way. It answers my question to some extent, but that's not, I'm expecting a more general answer.
So what was the question again?
The question is, you took C++ course, right? The computer science, whatever, 101 or something, the required course that you need. So when you introduce a variable in C++, what do you need to define when you're introducing it?
Wait, I don't know if Jeff just said this, like if it's an integer or something.
You said integer?
Right? Int A.
Yeah, I don't hear you very well. Could you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, like int A or something, or int B.
Okay, so that's again similar to Jeff's answer. That answers my question in part. So the two parts of the answer you gave, pretty, that sort of tell me that you remember something from your computer science course. So you have to introduce a type, and a type of the variable could be string, could be integer, could be float, and so on. So in Python, you don't have to do it. You don't need to worry about it. Yet all the variables, they have types. So for example, if the function type returns me a type of a variable, right? If I type type of A, I will get integer. If I type type of my B, will be integer again. All right, let me do the following. Let me introduce C, which will be B divided by 3, right? So if C is 1.333 and so on. So what would be the type? Make a guess before Python tells us.
Float.
Yeah, it's going to be float. And Python does these type conversion automatically. You don't need to worry about it. It just divides one integer by another integer and gets a float, right? And then, well, you can use, for example, you can use numbers in scientific notation, right? And then again, the type will be float, right? Okay. And while, of course, when dealing with engineering calculations, you will need to use scientific notations because nobody wants to write the numbers that long. All right. So Python, as I said, it does the type conversion when you need to get from integer to float, but you can do the other way around. For example, I have a variable f, which I assign the value 4.7. All right. Obviously, the type of this variable will be float. However, if I do the following function, int of f, and let me call this thing G. G is int of f. So G would be 4, and obviously type of G would be integer. While the only problem with these type conversion is that it doesn't do the rounding right. So if I were converting 4.7 to integer, I would certainly say, oh, it's 5. Well, there is a function for that. So if you want, you can introduce h is round f, and this function round does the rounding. And I can just type h, and it will be 5. And then, well, it will be already the integer type. The interesting thing is, well, you can use round not necessarily to convert it to round it to the integer. You can round it to whatever number of digits you want to. So, if, for example, if you have a pi number, you can round your pi to 4 digits, right? And get the familiar 4 digits you probably seen before many times. Okay, quick question, guys. So I'm using two monitors here, and therefore I have camera in front of me, and I have another screen on the right of me. So I'm looking at the screen where I see your faces and not where my camera is. Does it bother you? Would you prefer me to look straight, or it doesn't matter at all, or you don't look at all? Doesn't bother? Okay, that's good. Because it's more convenient for me to share the screen here and have the faces on the side. Okay. So the Python, as I said, there are many things with the syntax, like the spaces don't really matter, except for some cases which I will talk about. So for variables and for many other things like functions, what matters, they're all case sensitive. So I have variable 6, and I say, I have a variable x, and I say x equals 6, and I can introduce another variable x small and let it be 1. So you know, and I can say x plus x, and it will add it. If you were writing a code, do you think it's a good idea to have two variables which the only thing they differ is one is capital and another is small? Is it a good idea? Nope, because it's very easy, especially with something like letter X. It's very easy to make a mistake. So there are a lot of things in programming which are not, you know, things will work. Python won't tell you anything. It won't complain at all. However, it's not a good style. So conventions for your variables, so how you call your variables, it's a question of style of programming, and because of bad style, in many cases, it's hard to write a code. So the main thing, the code should be readable, right? So you can have variables with short names, for example, m equals 1000, v equals 1, and I can introduce a variable d, which is m over v. Is it obvious from these letters what I'm talking about here? That's good, it's obvious to you, but if I were to write a script for my thermo class or for whatever, for a small research problem, what I would do, I would call my variable, instead of m, I would call it mass. Instead of v, I would call it, sorry, volume. And instead of d, I would call it density. It's a little bit longer, but it will help you a lot when you will be reading your scripts. And by the way, well, of course, one thing which you can do, and moreover you have to do, is to write comments, right? If you're writing a script, so the number sign is a sign which defines a comment in your Python script. So everything after the number sign is ignored. So if nothing happens, so I can say m equals 10, m equals 100, right? And if I ask what is m, m is 10, because everything after these number sign here is ignored. It's just a comment. And well, this is what you often do, right? You comment out parts of your code so that it's not executed. All right. Any questions so far? Good, good. That's good. All right. In next thing I wanted to tell you would be, well, we dealt with a little bit with types and variables. The next type I will introduce. So once again, if I have a number, right, this number type, if it's an integer number, the number type is integer. However, if I put my number in quotation marks, right, guess what type will it be? Say
String.
something. Huh?
String.
Yeah, it's going to be a string. And of course, similar to many other programming languages, Python has strings. And by the way, it doesn't matter whether you have double quotation marks or single quotation marks, as long as they are consistent. You can't do both, right? You should either have both single or both double. Oh, what is that? So I hear some background noise, and I don't know what it is. Okay. Now you guys are all muted, so. Okay, this is strange. Hold on a second. Okay, now it seems that everything's fine. So, all right. So these are strings, and you can make different operations on strings. So you cannot, well, obviously you cannot add a number to a string, right? Let it be x equals 6 and x small equals 1 in quotation mark. If you add x plus x, you will get an error, right? And you can, you know, by the way, one thing which is very different between when I was learning to program and when you're learning to program. When I was learning to program, well, internet existed, but in a very, very limited way. I don't think I had access to internet when I started programming. So if you get an error, you don't know what to do, right? Right now, if you get an error, you just copy it and Google for it, and it will tell you everything. So, all right. If I can't add a number to a string, but I can add one string to another string. If x is 6, I can say x plus x small is 61, right? But look, it's in quotation mark, so that means it's a string which says 61. Or I can do an alternative, I can do x small plus x, and it will be 16 in quotation marks again. All right, next thing, strings, they have length, right? So let me introduce a string hello, and I want to calculate the length of my string, and it's going to be 5 because it has 5 symbols, right? You can, ironically, you can not just add the strings. So, for example, you can multiply strings. If I want, I take my string and multiply it by 3, is just literally replicated 3 times. So then, well, what I can do, of course, I cannot multiply it by a number which is non-integer. So furthermore, you can print strings, and I will introduce a function which you will use very often, right? The function print. So it just gives you an output. Well, you can ask, oh, our IPython is giving us the output anyway. Why do you need this function? In fact, this is IPython, but you will be executing codes in some other Python environment where it doesn't print every string. So you need to print stuff only when you have to print it. And so you can write print hello world, and that's typically that's what is considered okay. The first code you have to write in a programming language you're learning. So if you succeeded with that, you can say, okay, I'm done with my 0th lesson in Python. Oh, and by the way, you know why 0th, not first? Because in Python, similar to C or C++, when you number the elements of something, you start numbering not from 1, but from 0. And speaking of that, when you have a string, you can refer to different elements of your string. For example, I said, well, y was my string hello, and if I want to get the first element of my string, I need to say y, and then in the square brackets, 0. So that would be my first element. The second element will be this. Third element would be this, and so on. Guys, are you still with me or following? You have the pace is tolerable? All right, this is very good. So we learned how to get the refer to different elements in the string. Tell me, how do I do if I want, so if I want my, to see my last element here, do you know what I need to do? So I need to do what? Y?
5.
Well, let's try that. Nope, because
Four.
the elements are numbered from the 0, so it will be y of 4. Or in the general case, if you don't know how long is your string, you can say, okay, I have my length. Okay, let me call it string length. This is a new variable, and I say this is length of my string y, right? So if I then do print, oops, it will output the string length for me. And if I want to refer to the last element, I can say, okay, I need y of string length -1. And then it will print me an O. Conveniently, Python has a shorter way to refer to the last element and to refer to the element starting from the end. Press something occasionally, sorry. So you can just print y of -1, and that will give us the last element of the string. Y -2 will give me the one before that, and so on and so forth. Okay, few more things and I'll wrap up for today's, let's say two more things. Any questions so far? Is it easy? Okay, good. So then I talked about several types. I talked about integer, float, strings. Any recollection from your C++ course? Were there any other types of variables you had in C++? Any? You don't have to have recollection from C++. And by the way, I know that in general, I know that after students take the C++ course, they don't know anything. That's why I say, well, you don't need to teach them C++. You need to teach them Python because it's much, much simpler. Okay, no recollection? All right. Huh?
Is bool?
Yes, Boolean type, and that's exactly the type I wanted to talk about. So the logical variables, right? So you can say x equals to true. And Python, I want to remind you, Python is case sensitive. So if you type x equals true, starting not from a capital T, it will give you an error because name true is not defined. It's true starting from a capital T. All right, and if you say type of x, it will give you Boolean. And well, for different mathematical operations, you can get the Boolean results. So, for example, you can say 3 greater than 2. It will say true, or you can say 4 greater or equal than 2. True as well. Or you can say 5 is not equal to 2. And that's true again. All right. Or you can say 5 is equal to 2. And this is false for sure because 5 is not equal to 2. And this, I want to emphasize then, when you have a single equal sign, that means you assign a value to a variable. If you have a double equal sign, that means this is a mathematical operation which will return you true or false. You're checking whether the value on the left equals to the value on the right. All right, and you can have some other operations which return you the Boolean outputs. So for example, you can check, if we go back to strings, you can check whether the letter H is in hello. Yeah, it's true. Or you can check whether a letter H is in hello and get a false. Why did it give me false? Guys, why did it give me false?
It's case sensitive.
Yes, it's case sensitive and the small h is not there for sure. Well, what would be true is that h is not in, no, I think I don't need, no, I don't need is, I need just not in hello, and that would be true. All right, the last thing for today is conditional statements, and this is very similar to the C++, and so if I say I have a string, my string equals to hello, and I want to check if h in my string. And in the end of this line, I need to put the column, otherwise it's not going to work. That's the part of a syntax. And then see the IPython gives me these dots. So that means if I want to do something under this if, so I need to make an indentation. So that's an extremely important thing because Python, unlike many other programming languages, in many program languages, people use indentation to make the codes more readable. Python made it a part of their syntax. So if you're doing something inside the if statement or other things, which we're going to talk about later, you have to indent your line. So you can use tab, you can use spaces as long as you're consistent. You gotta not use both. So if this, then print, I don't know what I want to print. I want to print yes. H is in my string, and this is true. All right, so you can do if, and by the way, to repeat it, I just pressed up, right? That's all I did. And then I can add more condition. I can use elif, another condition, right? And then, oh, elif, and I need the condition. H in my string. Print something, I don't know, print. Oops. Oops. Yes, that's small. Okay, and I can use an else statement. And then here say print no. All right, and then you press enter, oops, and then, oh boy, okay. Second. I press shift enter to finish that, and it gave me, oops. It gave me the result. Okay, and now if I change my string to something else, my string equals to hello, starting from a small h, and I'll repeat this whole conditional thing, it will tell me different results. Yes, but small, because now it starts from a small h. And of course, well, you can do it with not only with just in general this condition. When something is in string, you can check a specific element in string. So if my string 0, I'm checking the 0 element, equals to h print the first letter is H. And for example, I want to print my H in quotation marks. And then in order to do that, I would need slashes. So, okay. Well, it didn't print me anything because my first letter is not H capital, it's H small. So let me do the following thing. I'll go back. I'll say my string is hello starting from the capital H, and rerun this last thing again. The first letter is H. All right. Are you still with me? Are you following? Okay, good, because that's the point when you can stop following, because we're done for today. I think that's enough information for you to start and to have a small homework assignment due to next Tuesday. So a little bit of logistics, and I can stop recording at this point because it's not directly related to this Python material. Okay, I'm stop sharing and I'm stopping the recording.